Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
And welcome to another edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these critical times. I am your host, Bill Kelly. It's great to have you with us today on a very important time of year. It's autumn now. The calendar has turned, and MPs are heading back to work as we speak here. And, there's a lot of rhetoric and a lot of concern and a lot of speculation as to what's going to happen in this session of Parliament. We know that, as we talked about in a previous program, the NDP-Liberal deal has gone. Jagmeet Singh tore it up. And there's a lot of ramifications about what's going to happen there. But what's going to happen going forward? Well, Pierre Poilievre, who, of course, just can't seem to hold back his enthusiasm for trying to bring down this government so he can hopefully have a carbon tax election, and he thinks anyway win a huge majority, is going to present a non-confidence motion as we speak when I'm doing this program today. It's going to fail because the NDP and the Bloc have both said that they are not going to support it, which, by the way, is not to suggest that they want to support the government and that they support Justin Trudeau. They just don't want an election right now, and they still think that there is work that can be done. Poilievre is not really concerned or interested in getting any work done. He just wants power. So anything he can do to try to get that, he will do. As a matter of fact, we're told that there could actually be a couple of non-confidence motions coming forward from Mr. Poilievre. It's not going to happen, Pierre. Sorry, Skippy. No, not for now. Let's try to govern the country for just a little while. There are some numbers, though, that need to be concerning here. And that, of course, is where they are in the polls right now. We know that the Conservatives right now, the federal Conservatives, have a substantial lead. Some suggest 15 to 20-point lead in the polls, and he's riding pretty high these days. But what's interesting, if you look at the latest Angus Reid poll, which is a pretty reputable organization, the idea of a Poilievre government looks pretty strong right now simply because of those numbers. However, almost half of the people that were polled suggest that they still have serious concerns. They think, okay, the Liberals have got to go. No two ways about that. But they don't like Poilievre, and they don't trust Poilievre. Now, is that really the kind of person that you want leading your country? Somebody that over half of the country just doesn't trust and thinks that he has a hidden agenda? 46% of Canadians say they're fearful of a Conservative government under Poilievre. 35% are hopeful. I guess that's the Conservative base, really, isn't it, that number? And 54% say the Conservatives have a hidden agenda that they won't reveal until after they win the election. Well, I don't know how hidden it is because Poilievre has been pretty clear about what he wants to do. You've seen him running around the country these days at taxpayers' expense, by the way, with those little Axe the Tax T-shirts and saying this is what he's going to do. And the implication here and the inference seems to be from Poilievre is that, yes, he's going to get elected, and when he does and when he becomes prime minister, he's going to axe the tax. The carbon tax will go. But part B to this whole scenario that he seems to be getting across is that everything's going to be fine after we do that. There's going to be an influx of affordable housing, grocery prices will plummet, and everybody's going to have an easier time living. I mean, I really and truly hope that Canadians aren't as naive as Poilievre seems to think they are with some of the rhetoric that he's coming out with. But it's something that he has been banging the drum about for the last little while, and it seems to be resonating. But I guess my caution here is we've seen this act before, not necessarily from Poilievre, but from others. And when you've got a government that's as unpopular as the Trudeau Liberals are these days, the mindset seems to be, well, I don't have to say anything of substance. I don't have to justify. I don't even have to present any legitimate policies. I just have to say that guy's a bum and got to get rid of him, and I'll do better for you. But we don't have any evidence yet that things are going to get any better. Contrary to what Mr. Poilievre would say, if he were to axe that tax, if he were to become prime minister, gas prices may go down. I mean, they go down. They fluctuate these days now, but it's not as if they're all of a sudden going to become affordable for everybody. A lot of the price of gasoline, of course, still has to do with international influence. And Poilievre can't do a damn thing about that, notwithstanding what he may tell you. Grocery prices are not necessarily going to plummet just because the carbon tax goes down. We do know, and I think there's a parliamentary committee has come to some pretty strong conclusions, that there has been price fixing and gouging going on within those major grocery stores. Poilievre doesn't seem to want to talk about that. which may be in part because of the fact that one of his chief advisors is a former lobbyist for the Loblaw organization, one of the major, if not the major, grocery store chain. So you don't want to, bite that dog that feeds you. So Poilievre is pretty quiet about that. But it's not going to be the be-all and end-all and the nirvana that Poilievre seems to think it is. And I think that's the concern right now. The other thing about this, and I've talked about this on the program before, but it bears repeating. First of all, I don't think there's going to be an election this year, notwithstanding what Poilievre would like to see. But when we do get into a campaign right now, I think we have to worry about, and this is something that we talked about in the American election too, which is forthcoming, the quality of the candidates. And I think there's some serious concerns here. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about Justin Trudeau and how he's pretty much run the course here for an awful lot of Canadians. But is this other guy who's putting himself out there as the option, is this somebody that you can trust? Is this somebody that you have confidence in? And according to the polling, a lot of Canadians, the answer is no, they don't. He's not Justin Trudeau, but what is he and what does he stand for? And a lot of Canadians just don't seem to have the answer. There's a lot of things about Poilievre that just rub me the wrong way. And this is not news, because I've talked about this. I go back to my radio days when I think I interviewed him once. I mean, he's one of these guys that, yeah, he does a fair bit of media, but he usually goes to Poilievre or conservative-friendly institutions to do those interviews where he's allowed to spew his rhetoric and unchecked, and of course, and nobody seems to want to challenge him on this. But those who do challenge Poilievre, and we've seen this because it's happened a few times now, he's very thin-skinned, and this is what bothers me. When he is challenged, he resorts to name-calling and insults and bully tactics, and basically, it's the Donald Trump showbook once again. All the media is out to get me, and this is a conspiracy. And well, no, it's not. You know what? You want to run for public office, have the backbone to stand up and try to defend your ideas instead of simply trying to attack the person who's challenging you on this. If you really and truly believe that what you're proposing is a policy that's going to work, you should have the backbone and you should have the facts to be able to substantiate that. Poilievre doesn't present that. He just says, look, if you're challenging me, then you're just a Trudeau sycophant, and you're to be dismissed. Well, that's not the way things are supposed to be. Politicians need to be challenged, whoever they are, whatever their ideas are. And Poilievre seems to think he's going to get a free pass, or should get a free pass. And that really bothers me. And I think it's something that Canadians have to consider. Now, and again, I know that when I do something like this, invariably I'm going to get a lot of feedback about, well, you're just trying to stick up for Trudeau. No, I'm not. For the 1 millionth time, no, I'm not. I'm not a fan of Justin Trudeau, never have been a fan of Justin Trudeau. I think, like most Canadians, I think it's pretty obvious that he and the Liberals have worn out their welcome in Ottawa and worn out their welcome as the government. I get that. And I can understand where the polls are these days and where Canadians want to go. But let's consider the alternative. And I think that's something that most Canadians don't seem to want to address, but it's something that we may have to live with if, in fact, the next election, whenever that happens, does give us a new government, a conservative government. There is a number of things that we need to understand before we hand the keys over to Pierre Poilievre. In fact, they win the next election, if that's going to happen. I mean, you've got a guy right now who just basically is campaigning on slogans: axe the tax, do to this, bada boom, bada bing, name calling of his opponents, which is very childish, by the way. And I know it's a political tool that's been used ad nauseum, but not by smart people, not by intelligent politicians. It's appealing to the lowest common denominator, to attack Trudeau, attack him personally. Mark Carney is another name that's come forward in the last little while as a potential leader for the Liberal Party. Poilievre, in his comments to his caucus last week, when they finally decided to get back together in Ottawa in preparation for this session of Parliament, questioned whether or not Mark Carney had any economic prowess at all. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? This is a guy who had served 5 years as governor of the Bank of Canada, 7 years as the governor of the Bank of England. Now, you may agree or disagree with Carney's policies and his mindset, but for the love of God, how stupid do you have to be to suggest that a guy with that kind of a track record may not have any economic prowess at all? That tells you an awful lot, not about Mark Carney, but it tells you an awful lot about the character of Pierre Poilievre. And I think that's what we need to do going forward over the next couple of weeks and months as we head towards inevitably another election, which I still don't think is going to come for about a year. But when it does, we have to actually consider the character of the individuals that we're giving the power to. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, if we're going to elect a guy who's prime minister, who just, basically goes around with little T-shirts with political slogans on them and demeans and insults anybody who has the guts to challenge him, as we should do, you got to ask yourself, as bad as things are right now, economically, and as frustrated as you may be with Justin Trudeau these days, and an awful lot of Canadians, the majority of Canadians seem to feel that way, just ask yourself, with Pierre Poilievre, are we really and truly going to select him as a prime minister and run the risk of maybe going from bad to even worse? It's a question I think we need to get an answer to. That's it for this edition of the podcast. Thanks so much for being with us. You can catch us, of course, on Substack, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell and make sure you spread the word. Always great to get your feedback. I look forward to that, and I look forward to responding and creating that dialogue. This is what it's all about, and this is what we need to do these days in this country and in politics in general. There has to be informed and intelligent dialogue where we can exchange ideas and try to find out just where our friends, neighbors, and relatives are coming from. And that's what we tend to do on this podcast. I'm Bill Kelly. Until next time, stay in touch, stay informed.